Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Randy Johnson here from SpearMC. A little bit of an unusual situation, right, with all that's going on in the world. I'm going to be emceeing our discussion on PTF today, the webinar on the Get Current series for PeopleSoft Test Framework. This would be PTF. You're all on mute, and so I don't have a visual field that I can see your reactions, but we do have several of us from SpearMC that are on and monitoring the questions window. So if you have particular questions that you want to be asking, we're going to be monitoring the questions window. Unfortunately, there's a chat window as well, and I think an option to raise your hands. Let's all just focus on the questions window and throw those out here. And those of us that aren't in the middle of presenting will monitor that questions window, and we will do our best to make this a collaborative session. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for joining. We're putting together a number of webinars so that we can address the unending need for PeopleSoft knowledge in our community. And those will continue. We're targeting Fridays for the foreseeable future. We're always looking for ideas. So if you've got ideas on topics that you'd like us to present, send them our way, send them my way, and we'll see what we can do about putting together a webinar and get them scheduled in the near future. Again, thank you for joining. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. There's actually three of us that are monitoring and working the presentation. Myself, Randy Johnson, I'm the Vice President at SpearMC. Tom Treader might not actually make it. He has a client commitment, and so he may be joining midstream. And then Tarun, I didn't have a picture, and I was just talking to him earlier before we opened up the mic, and that's a shame because he looks probably younger than this very misleading picture of me. This picture was several years ago when I had dark hair. Pretty much it's gray by now. I'll be taking the lead through the PowerPoint section of the presentation today. Tarun is out there. Venkat Gandham is leading a status meeting with one of our clients. He will be joining here midstream, and he will be available for questions as well. So the three of us are intending to present. Tom, if he makes it, Tarun for sure, he's on with me, and then of course me, Randy Johnson. We would be remiss if we didn't introduce our company, SpearMC, at least in part. I assume most of you or many of you have heard of us, but it's a standard pitch that we put in all of our webinars. Then I want to engage the audience with a few polling questions, and we'll see how this works. We're going to use the polling feature within GoToWebinar, and you are my first audience that is going to be getting the polling feature. So keep your fingers crossed. We'll move on to PUM Strategies, so PeopleSoft Update Manager Strategies. And then I'll stop talking, and then you get to really hear from Tarun on the PTF implementation, deep dive, what it is, and how you go about doing it. And of course, hopefully what you're all here to see is a demo of the tool and how easy it is to go out and create a script of your own and then start to execute that in an automated fashion. Without ado, I will move on. SpearMC, we are PeopleSoft implementers, trainers, upgraders. We have been doing this for a very long portion of our careers. Many of us are former Big Four, Big Eight, whatever it was when we worked there, and started our PeopleSoft careers. Our founder, Marcus Bodie, and I worked together at KPMG in the 90s when we founded the PeopleSoft practice at KPMG, and we have been doing it ever since. If you've ever been in one of our sessions, you've seen this slide, and you know that we do focus on PeopleSoft. It's not the only thing. We do some Hyperion, some other products that are all enhancements or add-ons to the PeopleSoft platform. But our bread and butter has been PeopleSoft and will continue to be. We've been doing this for a long time, and our first office, San Francisco, second Chicago. So Marcus Bodie and I worked together in Chicago. He moved to San Francisco, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago in April when it snowed in Chicago. And he got out of Dodge and opened up the office on Spear Street in San Francisco, actually. And that's how we got the name Spear. Second office was Chicago, which is where I am from. Actually, our biggest office now is up in Seattle, and we have spread across the country over the years. Okay, keep your fingers crossed. This is the polling questions that I want to ask. Let's see. I see of the 40 of you out there in attendance, there are a few that aren't paying attention. I see a little yield sign on your screen, which means you're not on the screen. You'll have to be on the screen to participate in this poll. So if you're not there, you might want to find your way over to the screen, and let me just see if I can launch the first of our questions here. How current is your ERP system? And by ERP, we're all on this call for PeopleSoft Test Framework, so we would be thinking, how current is your PeopleSoft system? Let's see if we're getting poll results. Are you able to see the poll? Yes. Oh, yeah, they're coming in. Excellent. They're coming in. 50% of you out there have voted, which means 50% have not. We'll give you another 10 seconds. We're up to 65. Some of you might be abstaining. Okay, we're at 68%. Oh, someone is saying they're not able to click on a section. Sorry, Dwayne. I'm not sure why that would be the case. We'll look into it. Let us know if you would, Dwayne, if you're using an iPad or a Mac or something. I'm not sure why you would have that issue. Also having the same issue as Les. So I'll go ahead and close this poll. We'll present the results. 78% were able to produce, and so a large percentage of you, almost 85%, are on PeopleSoft 9.2. That's very good, because to be able to take advantage of a lot of the features and functions, especially the selective adoption on PUM images, you have to get to the version 9.2, hence the question. A few of you are within one. Now, within one could be, if you're on Campus Solutions, you're on 9.0. But for HCM and financials, obviously there was a 9.1 and a 9.2. And then there are a few that are way behind, 2 or more, and some of you that aren't paying maintenance. Now, if you're current but you're not paying maintenance, you can still use PTF. The tool was released in an earlier People Tools version, but you won't be able to take advantage, obviously, of the new features and functions. Thank you for participating in the poll. I will hide the results, and I believe I'm back on the PowerPoint. That worked well. For those of you that couldn't do it, I apologize for the issues. We'll look into that. If you could give me more feedback on what was happening, that will enhance the future sessions. By the way, we've got a few more polls coming up. So if if they didn't work for that one, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 more chances. In fact, why don't I go ahead and launch one more, and let's see if we can test out what the issue was. So for the almost 5% of you that are on release 9.2, you know what we mean when we say PUM, PeopleSoft Upgrade Manager image, right? So there are image releases. If you could let me know what release range you are in, I would appreciate it. Looks like a few of you are voting again. For those of you that are stuck, give it another try. Let me know if this poll is working for you or if you're having the same problem. 58 of the precincts are in. Same issue. Oh shoot. We'll try. Okay. So good. Very good. Les answered in the question that they're on image 32, which is outstanding. Hey Les, we're having a dialogue now. Are you HCM financials both campus? Let us know which application you're on. Okay, campus, very good. I'm going to close the poll. Looks like about the same amount, 70% or so voted, and that's where we are ended. So, yeah, a little bit of a bell curve here, right? So, some are very, very current, almost a quarter of you, very good. Others are, I would say, within shouting distance. And then when we look at the purple and the yellow sections, a lot of times what happens is those are the images you got to when you did your original upgrade, and you haven't done an image update since. That's typically what we see when we see folks that are in the lower image counts. Unless, of course, you're in campus, and unfortunately, the number scheme are just behind the number of images in the rest of the application. So thank you for participating. I'm going to move forward in the PowerPoint presentation and keep the other polls for the end if we have time. All right. So back to the PowerPoint presentation, PeopleSoft and PTF and PUM Strategies. There is another session this afternoon where we do a best practices discussion on strategies to stay current. So those of you that were in the bottom half of that last poll, if you're looking for strategies and just some advice on how to organize and get into a process where you can stay current and get into those latest image versions. And by the way, for those of you that are on earlier versions of PeopleSoft 9.1 or earlier, tune in this afternoon and we'll give you some pointers on the approaches that we take and ways that we can help to automate that process and keep you current well into the future. So I'm using terms. Some of the terms I'm using are known. PUM, that seems to be fairly common these days, but without insulting anyone's intelligence, let me explain that the PeopleSoft Update Manager, the U is update, not upgrade. We are reminded very frequently by Oracle that now that you're on, those of you that are, the 9.2 version, there are no application upgrades anymore. There are updates that you can take advantage of. So PUM is the PeopleSoft Update Manager, and it is a tool that you have at your disposal, and you use that as a tool to take the images as they come out. So the PeopleSoft Update image, PI, if you will, as those roll out, 4 to 5, really 4 times a year, these new images are coming out. These images are bundles of enhancements, some bug fix, but I'd say mostly enhancements and features that have been delivered, and they're delivered through these images, these PeopleSoft Update images. Most of you know what those are because you answered the previous poll which image number you were on. Okay, there are other pieces of what you can adopt through PUM, a release patch set, critical fixes that just are break fixes, maybe they're tax fixes that can't wait for a specific image, so they're the release patch set. And then actually not even widely available anymore is a proof of concept, which is the opportunity to participate in a beta version of a patch set. This you would be working directly with Oracle. It would be a single customer, one-on-one with Oracle. Not a common scenario, but it does exist that the proof of concept option is out there in the PUM world. This is a dated slide, actually. If you were on the Innovation Week keynote presentations that we heard from everyone, Paco first, that the state was updated 2031, and Oracle will continue to extend that support date at least through date on a 10-year rolling basis, looking 10 years out. And so let me just say your investment in PeopleSoft is safe. Don't fret, it's not going away. And so the idea of getting current and staying current is a good idea because there will be additional enriched features that continue to roll out as the years progress, okay? All right, so I was gonna say there's only two types of strategies. I'll bounce down to the other page, the get current and the selective adoption, but there's technically a third option, and that's do nothing. Some of you that are on those lower image levels probably have done nothing, haven't applied PUMs, haven't applied anything since your upgrade, and you're entitled to do that, especially if your business is functioning and flying along without worry. But you are losing out on an opportunity. You're paying maintenance, you are paying for the enhancements that are rolling out, and we recommend that you take advantage of those. So ignoring the do nothing option, there's two ways to strategize around how to apply images, a PUM strategy. The first is selective adoption, and I alluded to this earlier when I said once you get to 9.2, the upgrades are done on the application side. We all know there's still upgrades that are needed from time to time on the people tool side, but on the application side, there are no more upgrades, only updates. And you are not forced to take a full image. You can choose to selectively adopt bits and pieces of that image if there are features or functions or fixes that are available in an image, but you don't want to go through the full cycle of applying the entire image. You are able to selectively adopt bits and pieces of that image and pull it in. And when you selectively adopt, the PUM service is smart enough to understand what the prerequisites are for that particular selectively adopted piece of the image, and it pulls it all into a nice package for you, and you just deploy that selective adoption piece. Many, I might even say most of our clients have adopted some level of selective adoption as a component of their PUM strategy. The other side is a full get current, right? So when an image is released, you can choose to simply do a full get current, which means if I've skipped a few images or if I've only selectively adopted out of various images between the official image I'm on and the image that I'm targeting, I can choose a full get current, which means it applies everything that I have not yet applied between my current image and my target future image. And this is really, as a part of our strategy, something we would recommend that you do at a minimum once a year. If you're doing selective adoption, we recommend do that with some degree of application over 3/4 of the year, but at least consider on an annual basis a full get current. Okay, so those are the strategies for you to start to consider when you're on the People Tools application 9.2 set. Now, the topic that we're here for, we heard all about PUM, right? But why are people not applying images? What is the main reason that we see our clients falling behind? It is the regression test cycle. The numbers of times that we have to do testing became excessive. And with the frequency of these images coming out, that meant regression test cycles every quarter if we wanted to try to stay current. And even when we do selective adoption, that didn't seem to reduce the amount of testing that was required to validate that those pieces that we're adopting don't break our functionality within the system. So the regression test cycle is what is holding people back from a regular get current maintenance approach. All right. Along comes this tool, the Peoplesoft Test Framework, and automate. And I will let Tarun do a lot of the talking on what PTF does and how it works. But essentially, what it is an automated testing tool that is PeopleSoft specific. It is Oracle's tool. They use PTF in their testing. In fact, that's where it came from. And then it was commercialized. And then clearly Oracle saw the value in giving it away as a part of your license that you've paid, giving it to the customers so that they could use it as a tool to automate and speed up the testing cycle. Okay, we get it. There's an ROI here in putting your PTF in and using it as a tool for constant regression testing. Okay, it is cost effective. It enables more frequent applications. Even if it's just selective adoption, we can do the test cycles. It standardizes it. I don't have any variability in the testing that's executed because it's executing the same exact test every time I need it to. Okay. When might you do it? Well, obviously, when you're doing image testing, image releases, People Tools patching, People Tools upgrades, when you do that, end-to-end unit testing, perfect, staging data for the end-to-end unit testing. So we had a client who wanted to implement a new module, the cash management module. Well, we needed a lot of test data to come out of AP to create test files so we could send to the bank. In the past, we would have to recreate that test data every time we needed a new sample bank file. Well, with PTF, we could just execute those voucher create and pay cycle scripts, automate that so that all we have to do is manipulate the file format, run the scripts, create a new file, send it to the bank. All right. That's just one use case for why PTF is an excellent tool. We'll talk about the use cases here and when to use PTF, when it makes sense, and when it doesn't. Right. So PTF is it mimics users logging on and doing a process. A script is a unit. A shell is a bunch of scripts cobbled together to do an end-to-end test. So you could do unit testing, system testing, and integration testing, even integration with systems outside of PeopleSoft. But it's not a performance testing tool, right? So you can't mimic thousands of people logging on unless you set it up and run it 1,000 times. There are other tools more appropriate for performance testing. We say no to user acceptance testing. We really probably should say some, because you can augment user acceptance testing with PTF by staging data for the end part of a user acceptance test. you can have users validate the output of PTF scripts as a component of user acceptance testing, but it really isn't intended to 100% eliminate user acceptance testing, because we truly want the users to be experiencing the end-to-end process in a user acceptance test. But the regression testing, my goodness, this is the big bang for your buck, right? We can stage thousands of shells and get the regression suite executed without a band of testers having to come together every quarter, every month, however frequently you need to do the regression testing. That was me. I'm going to continue to present the PowerPoint, but Tarun is going to be doing the talking. So Tarun, you're going to have to give me a little ding signal when you want me to advance the slide to the next slide. But it's a good thing it's your turn, because my voice is about to give out, apparently.
You got it. Alrighty, my name's Tarun. So let's start by talking about some other automation options that you might use. I'll start from the bottom and move up on this slide. So QTP is a licensed product from Hewlett-Packard. It's Quick Test Professional, and it's useful for functional testing, but tests built on the software aren't robust to any changes in the user interface due to upgrades or customizations. Then we've got Selenium, which is another well-known open source tool for automated testing, but encounters the same issues as QTP. The only way to know if tests are broken when using either of these tools is to manually verify your whole library. And I think it doesn't really make sense to build a whole library of automated tests only to have to manually maintain them with every change. And I think this might be where PeopleSoft Test Framework really shines. Tests built using PTF are robust to changes due to upgrades or customizations, since PTF has access to and understands the PeopleSoft metadata working behind the scenes. This has the added benefit of allowing PTF to automatically report whenever upgrades break a script. And best of all, PTF has no additional licensing costs since it's already part of PeopleSoft. And we can go to the next slide. So we can talk about the general cycle we follow for PTF implementations. I think the big takeaway from this slide is that we at Spear have already built a library of PTF scripts for every PeopleSoft module, giving every new client the option to get a head start on their implementation. So after choosing to use our pre-built library or set up your own test plans, we can prep the PTF environment and client in whichever non-production environment you are currently manually testing in. Next, we'll validate the test scripts and shell tests and update them to whatever values you need, and then execute the full test library and review the logs, and we adjust our plans from there. The cycle continues. And now we'll look at how this translates into more of an actual project. So here we've got a sample plan for a project. It's a 10-week implementation split into 5 subsections. Within this implementation, we implement our full library of scripts, which is at this point around 1,000 scripts. So listed here are a few more services that Spear generally includes in their plans, and I think Randy might be able to speak a little bit more on these ones than I could.
Sure, I'll take that. One, right, is take advantage of the latest People Tools versions. If you're not on, and I should have done a poll on this, if you're not on 857 or 858, this is where PTF really shines. 856, certainly it was working, but there are a lot of bugs that have been worked out and delivered in the 857 and 858 tool set. So if you are needing to do an upgrade, we recommend it. But the beauty is, if you're doing an upgrade on anything, upgrade on People Tools or updates on PeopleSoft, you'll have automated scripts to accelerate the test cycle. We do, well, we recommend that you, and it's not on this screen here, we recommend that you at least consider looking at an Oracle Cloud Infrastructure tenancy for a test environment. And the main reason for that, well, there's many reasons, thousands of reasons, but a main reason is that you have the earliest access to the images and the tools releases through Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. about 6 to 8 weeks before general availability, you would have access. And obviously, it is not intended at that early stage or suggested by SpearMC that you would use that for production initially, but certainly for testing, it is a service that we can help work with you. And then something that we'll be discussing this afternoon, the program that we have to help you execute regression testing. So let's build your PTF library, and then if you still hate testing, well, don't do it. Outsource it. Hire us, and we will do testing as a service for you. And we will do that on a quarterly basis or whatever frequency cadence you're interested in, and really take a lot of the regression test cycle out of your hands. And by the way, that also includes maintaining those test scripts and updating them, and keeping them so that they function. If you're interested in taking that approach, we certainly do have that feature available. It's available through our managed services line of services, and we've got several clients that have taken us up on it. Again, it's the dream of getting out of the testing cycle and letting another entity do that who enjoys it. That's it, Tarun. I'll let you take it back. Do you want me to move to the next slide?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And Randy's touched on what's going to be on the next 2 slides, which is we're going to talk about environment a little bit. And it's important that we properly set up an environment for PTF. And we can see that there's many steps involved in this process. And a big thing to note is that there's one way to make this, I think, a little bit simpler and better for you, which is actually on the next slide, which is setting up an OCI instance specifically for testing. It allows you to access all the latest tools. You've got PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, you've got access to data privacy framework and PeopleSoft encryption tech. And this also allows you to create a golden repository for all of your PTF assets and provides a proof of concept for additional OCI environments you might be interested in. So if you want to talk any more on this, Randy, otherwise I'm good for the next slide.
No, I'm good, Tarun. I'm good.
Cool. This means it's time to start talking about the actual tool. PTF works like most automated testing softwares. Anytime you run a manual test in PeopleSoft, PTF can record those actions and replay that test at any point in the future. In other words, it basically works to replicate the actions of a single user accurately over many tests. Next slide. But what really makes PTF great is that it directly connects to and understands the PeopleTools metadata behind each page in a test. That means that if there are any customizations, upgrades, or just edits made to the page, the test can still locate the fields and run successfully, and reports will be generated noting the changes for further review. So if it does break, you'll know. Similar to its understanding of PeopleSoft metadata, PTF can also run processes, queries, and data mover scripts because of its ability to integrate seamlessly with the PeopleSoft application. Now we can look at the actual tool. So here we've got the Explorer user interface. We see on the left that we have a recognizable directory format for organizing scripts. The Explorer allows us to easily access all our essential functions with a handy user interface that is pretty easy to work through. And here we can see an example of one specific test. This one happens to be requisition creation. In this view, we can edit our test steps, test cases, and we can debug. Note that you can view both the test and its test cases in one integrated view. It might seem like I'm going over these slides pretty quickly. That's because we're going to show you all of these in the demo in just a little bit. Here we've got shell tests, and this is our solution for more complex testing scenarios. Shell tests allow us to call other tests and manipulate their inputs and outputs as needed. We can save things as variables and use them in later tests. Next, we've got logs, which is another place that PTF really shines. We can see field metadata listed in the log details up on the left, the execution options used to run the test on the right, and the results on the bottom. I'll talk more about what the execution options mean when we do our demo. And here, while PTF is a great tool to begin automated testing, SpearMC has developed an additional tool that integrates neatly into PTF with PTF to generate formatted PDF versions of PTF logs. As you can see, we have the ability to select how in-depth we want our logs to be, and this can provide easy-to-read test evidence for later review. Here we see one such report, and we can note that we have a visualization for rates of success on each test, and we can see rows in that pivot grid as well for each test. Actually, I believe in this one, it's actually each folder. But here we've got more specific logs. So if you need more specific logs, we've got you covered with detailed results for each test. And this continues in the next slide. So here, this is an example of a log again. And you can see where it's starred that it's a fatal error, correct? Included in each of these reports is all the details given in that results box, as well as what's on the next slide, which is a screenshot of whatever the screen was when it failed. So if it's a screenshot is configured in the test, our reports will capture those in the case of a failure. And now it's time for less talking and more tools. So I'm going to set up my screen, show my screen. See this? There we go. Alrighty. So let me start from the Explorer view here. So here you can see that Explorer view that we saw on our slides earlier. We're gonna use our folder here that I've called webinar. I've already made a shell and some tests for us, but let's go ahead and demo this live. We're gonna make a script to create a requisition. So I'll go ahead and open up this. This is what it looks like when you've opened it up. I already saved it as live demo. Now, let's do it the way that we might usually do a test. We're gonna try recording a test to begin with. Doing this gives us a good draft to start off with whenever we're automated testing. So let me log in. That is not the password I needed. 1 second. There we go. Alrighty, so I'm going to start recording now. And it will record all of our actions taken from here on. So we're going to create a requisition. So we'll just use our regular navigation to get there. Navigator. In fact, I'm just going to use recent places. And we'll pull up add update requisitions. Great. At this point, we'll keep the defaults. And there we go. We're not going to change any of these. Let's just pick an item. In this case, we'll use item 10,000. Cool. And how many of these do we want? We want 2 of these. Unit of measure. We're going to save each. And then I think this requisition is good to go from here. So I'll just hit save. And that's it. So we've created a requisition and we want to be able to replicate that in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording now and we'll take a look at what it's made. I'll close this window. Alrighty, so this is what happens when you record a test. So you can see it comes up with each step at a time. Also note that when I was doing the recording, I used Internet Explorer. We can use Firefox and Chrome for playback, but recording is done in Internet Explorer. So let's see.
Tarun, as you're doing that, I do have two questions that I was going to call out. One is, how do you get to the PTF tool? How do you access it? And then the second was, does PTF record your user ID and password?
Let me start with the second one first, which is PTF. So the way that PTF handles user IDs and passwords is actually quite nice. It uses execution profiles. So here on the bottom right, I'm going to click on this blue link here. Here we see a list of execution options or execution profiles. You can see that they all have like readable names, like ePro requester, for example. And here is where you would list your user ID and password. When we do our recording, it doesn't record your user ID and password. Instead, you'll set up an execution profile here, and every time you run the test, you'll use that execution profile. As far as how do you get into the PTF tool, I believe when you set up your workspace, you can set up PTF, but we can set it up for you. When you log in, there's a screen where you set up your client and everything like that, but that's going to be outside the scope of this webinar, I think.
It is. What I would say is it's like a developer workstation. So you access it similar to if you were accessing the application app designer pages, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You would need that. Some of our clients set it up in a virtual desktop that's shared, so there's a single installation. Others have a unique or even just desktop installation.
The choice to go with the remote one makes a lot of sense because then you have one library of PTF scripts, which is quite useful.
Yep.
So let's go through this real quick. We can see that it's automatically unchecked quite a few of these steps. Those are steps that it feels are unnecessary. And the check mark just means that it runs the step or it doesn't run the step. From here, a PTF developer's job would be to basically clear this up, clean it up, and basically take only what we need. You see here all of these steps from basically steps 5 through 10 here. We actually don't need any of these. This is us navigating through the nav bar. One handy thing about PTF is that it can navigate directly to the page that you need to go. So I've deactivated these, but I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of these. Delete step. Oh, before I do, to talk about this one, so we see set value password, and it's given this value. That's not the actual value of the password. And I see a question.
There is a question from James, and he is asking, are you saying you can only record in Internet Explorer?
So you can record and playback in Internet Explorer, but the only place you can record is in Internet Explorer.
Yeah,
that's a little confusing.
That's correct. Yeah. So the question is yes, you can. The answer to the question is yes, you can only record using Internet Explorer. That is a known weakness within Oracle that they're working on. However, you can play back using just about any browser. So Chrome, Safari, Edge, whatever browsers you use, you can play back, and the test can be executed through different browsers. But right now, Internet Explorer is it for the record.
I think an even more technical answer is that it uses Selenium for playback. So if the browser is supported by Selenium, it can play back the test on it.
Perfect. Yep.
So back to this. So we can see that, so I removed all of those steps that involve navigation. We can see now that it's really only just a few steps here. We are navigating to a page, which is step 2. We're going to hit the OK button. Basically, we're navigating to the page and we're going to the Add tab. We're going to hit OK. We're going to set our inventory item ID. We're going to set the number we require. We're going to set the unit of measure. Ooh, I see a question from Rodney. I noticed that you didn't have to hook your browser when recording. Why are times when I have to hook your Internet Explorer browser? So let me walk back here. So when I go to the test recorder, I went ahead and clicked the home button here that starts the web client and automatically hooks it up. So if you have, if you were trying to use something that wasn't Internet Explorer, this would be like, just use this whenever you want to record. Click the test recorder button and hit that home button. That'll take you right to whatever browser you need to use. So what's the next step after this? Let's say we want to make this a little bit more maintainable and we want to try using some variables. So let's insert a step above, and let's say our inventory item ID is what we'll want to turn into a variable. So we can see here that this is where some more development comes into play. You can really make like much more maintainable tests if you start using variables, as well as you'll see later it's useful for shell tests. So in this case, let's set up our value. We'll call this item ID, value of 10,000, and here we've got item ID. There we go. And just like that, you now implemented a variable here that's using 10,000. So now in the future, if you ever want to test a different item, all you gotta do is change it there, and you'll see how this works in a shell script later. So I see I've got a question from Lisa on how you access the test framework. So the test framework comes with PeopleSoft, but you do have to set it up. Like there is a setup in the beginning. I don't think we're going to cover that in this webinar, but once you set it up, I usually just keep a shortcut on my desktop, double click, it's a handy user interface. When you log in, it asks for your server details, you pick a username and password, and whatever username and password you use there needs to be set up as a profile on whatever application you're using. I know that we've got more in-depth classes on this later, and we can cover that thoroughly then, or if I have time at the end, we can talk about it. So this is it for a live demo. I know better than to run live demoed code live, so I'm going to go back to a test that I've already made here. So in this case, we've got create requisition right here. The executable is here. Actually, let me see here. In this case, this is the one that I'm using. I literally just keep it here. I call it Peoplesoft Test Framework because it's that's easier for me. I don't remember what the actual .exe file is called, but I can go into that later.
Yeah, it is a setup that has to happen. Usually IT's involved because it is connecting two-tier to a development instance, development environment, and we do have a training class on how to actually what the technical installation it encounters with PTF. It's a 4-hour class. So, and I don't mean to chuckle. There's a lot that goes into getting PTF up and running in an environment. And I know it looks easy when Tarun just clicks on an icon, but he's clicking on an icon that is accessing installed PTF on a machine. So the installed PTF connects to one of the databases and one of the applications so that you can connect to your dev environment. You can switch over, connect to your test environment, much like you do in the app designer.
Exactly. Thanks for clarifying, Randy. So,
I don't know if I clarified or not, but
Lisa says perfect, so it looks like you did a good job.
Here you go.
So this is a test that I've already made. You'll see it looks very similar. The only thing I've added is a few more variables here. What we'll talk about in this case is we'll talk about what test cases are and how they look in PTF. Test cases, it's pretty easy. So here's our general, like this is our page for editing tests. All we gotta do is go to test case information and switch. So in this case, this is the test case I'm using for the shell script. I'll use later. But if I want to just try running this, I would go back to default and I would hit run test. I'm not going to run this test because it takes a little while, and I'll show you how the test runs when I run the shell script in just a second. So to walk you through, one interesting thing that you'll see on this is that on line 17, it's using span get property. So it's going to find this ID on whatever web page you're on, and it's going to try and get this property text content and save it to a variable rec ID. This will be useful in our shell script because this means I can now get a property from a page and use it in a later script. So we can start linking scripts together to make a shell script. PTF also has a handy tool for this that I'll show off when I play the shell script. Let me go ahead and take a look at one of these shell scripts. So this one, super simple. It's going to create a requisition, then we're going to delete a requisition. So we can see here I've got my variables that I used. I've got an item ID that I went ahead and defined here. I've got a quantity that I defined here. And then we've got these two lines. If you make execution profiles that are more specific to your test, for example, let's say you have a specific user profile that you use to create requisitions and a specific user profile you use to delete requisitions, or a more administrator type of profile. You can now switch between those between tests during the shell script. So this lets you more accurately mimic what you'd be doing during actual testing, rather than what I'm doing right now, which is I'm just using the BP1 profile. So let's try running this and see what happens. I hit run, and you can see it's pulled up the log, and now it's going to open up a web browser. It's important that you don't touch anything because it's basically driving your computer now. There we go. It's going to go ahead and log in now. So while this is running, if you guys have any more questions, you can go ahead and put them in now and we can start to answer those. But I'll keep talking in the meantime. So here we're creating our requisition as we did when we recorded. Since it navigated directly to the page, you don't see any breadcrumbs, nothing like that. It doesn't need any of that. It's going straight to the fields. It doesn't need to know where anything is on the user interface. And there we go. It's filled in our item ID. It's filled in our quantity. Now it's going to put our unit of measure, and it'll save. So now it's saved, and here it's going to grab the requisition ID as well. It'll need that requisition ID for later on in the shell. So there we go. Now we've created a requisition. We're going to switch to a user for deleting the requisition. Oh, I see Lisa's got a question.
Yeah, this one is on the execution now. Go ahead.
Who executes the,
Take it.
Who executes tests, IT or functional subject matter experts? It depends on you, but it depends on whoever's doing your manual testing right now, basically. Whoever does your manual testing can pretty much run these scripts on their own. And again, it depends on how you want to use PTF. If you're using this for just scheduled regression testing, it might be possible to just schedule it to run your full library, once a month or something like that. But if you want to run specific tests, it might make sense to have subject matter experts, though you don't really need to know much to run the tests. Executing the test, you don't need to know much about the functionality. All you need to do is hit run and check the logs afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And it's funny because the answer is yes or both, right? All. and you go back to the screen I had where what are the appropriate uses for PTF? Users might do it for unit testing when they need data staged, right? So they might grab a shell that gets all of the stage data they need, so they don't have to go in and repetitively, create those transactions just so that you can, evaluate a new report or, create an outbound file that keeps changing its format. Users can execute it in regression testing, or you can hire SpearMC to do the testing service for you, and we can do that. right? But really, it's all of the above. The intent is to shorten the effort for anyone who does testing of any kind, unit testing for developers, all the way through regression testing for users.
So back to what we're doing here. Here we can see a log. We see that we have 2 tests being run here. We can see that the first test ran to success, going to give us a green flag, but our second test is going to give us a little yield sign, meaning something's wrong. You can also see that the whole shell is run to this warning sign. It's all running fine, runs into an error here. And what does it do when it comes to an error? It logs a screenshot, which is very useful for later. There's an option on PTF, this is a little technical, but to leave the browser open or closed at the end of the test. Let's say you close the browser, let's say you come back to this later and you want to know why it failed. These screenshots are incredibly useful for that. All right, I think that's it for this tool specifically. Let's talk a little bit more about what's called the reporting tools that we offer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit no on that. And we can see here, I'm in PIA right now. I'm going to go ahead and go to Navigator. We'll go to Test Evidence Report. Let's take a look at what these test evidence reports look like. So I'll say cycle start date today, cycle end date today, and let's search. And these are all the tests that have been run today. Here, we've got the most recent one right here on top. We can open up the detailed log, and this is exactly what we saw on our PTF screen. But this does not require that you have PTF installed. So if you are accessing this as somebody who isn't a PTF developer or somebody who doesn't need to execute PTF tests, but would be interested in seeing how the testing is running or does need access to the logs for whatever reason, this is a very easy way to get to that. Our summary reports, our detail reports, our log reports are all very useful for this as well. Let's see. Go ahead and open this up. As you can see, we've got a formatted PDF here with our full logs in here. Scroll down. There we go. So these are all the tests that were run today. As you can see, it's all logged on these PDFs. Say the detailed report, summary report, it's all similar, and it was on the. It looks similar to what we've seen on the PowerPoint earlier.
Hey, Tarun, that was awesome, and I always feel guilty when I don't give you enough time to step through the demos. I think you did an outstanding job of actually getting through the demo. We're at the last minute, and I did want to leave opportunity for some questions. There is one from Rodney on when recording. Can you just click from field to field without causing the recording to mess up, or would you have to tab through the fields?
I can answer that. Yeah, you can just click from field to field. Basically, operate it as if you are doing the testing. Just do your testing, hit record, do your testing, and it will generally record almost everything. If you have certain things like scroll sections and stuff like that, then you might need to record your test, go back and make a couple of adjustments here and there to make sure it's running the way you want to. That's where a PTF developer might come in real handy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Tarun, that after the recording, there's a chance to go back. Like if you feel that it's important to do a screenshot at a certain step every time the test is run, whether it succeeds or fails, you can go back to your script after it's recorded and insert a step to do a screenshot, just for evidence that the testing occurred, for example. So you know, that's one of the keys to get the recording done and then really enhance it through editing that recording, inserts, removals. But remember, when you're clicking for fields, it understands metadata. So it's not going to record the specific pixel on a page, it knows the metadata, it knows the field name in PeopleSoft. So wherever it is on the page, it finds it. And if you entered something there, it finds it and clicks it and enters. We are at the Q&A stage, aren't we? So hopefully you can see my question, my screen, which just says Q&A. We are running out of time though, and I do feel bad about that. I do have a list of the future classes that I will send to the group, everyone that was on. It should have made it into this PowerPoint, but it is in my next one for this afternoon. So I'm going to add that into this. I'll send it. It will be an attachment. So when you get the recording, you'll get a link to the recording. The attachment of the presentation will be there, and that will include the future training sessions that we have scheduled as well. Okay, if a few of you are still on, asking questions about buffering, there were issues with buffering. There's a patch actually that's a Microsoft patch that needs to be applied to resolve some of that. If you're asking the question, it might be that you're having that particular issue. I can get details for the solution there, and then yes, we'll provide the listing of testing training that is out in the future. We are long. I think I have to end the recording now. If you have more questions, our emails are in the deck. Our phone numbers are in the deck. You can reach us by any mechanism you choose. We will answer the call. Thank you so very much for participating in this session. I look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Everyone take care.
Thank you.